Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Meet Oscar, the easy way to transform accounts payable into a strategic powerhouse. I'm Mark Brousseau, President of Brousseau and Associates. I'm an industry analyst and researcher in accounts payable and accounts receivable. I'm pleased to be joined today by Pavan Singh, the CEO and co-founder of HighIQ, the sponsor for today's webinar. Before I hand it off to Pavan, I wanted to share some observations on what's going on in accounts payable. Next slide, please. So if we think about it, change comes slowly to accounts payable. We've been doing things pretty much the same way for a long time. But all of a sudden in 2020, everything seems to have changed in accounts payable. Today, it's truly business as usual. More than 90% of accounts payable departments are currently working remotely. And it's not just that departments are working remotely, it's that we don't even know when or if they're going to return to the office. This has completely disrupted established procedures and policies for how it is that we approve invoices and ensure that our suppliers get paid. Departments aren't just working at home, they're also working longer. 1/3 of accounts payable practitioners say they're working longer hours since the onset of COVID-19. In fact, 8% of accounts payable professionals, they're working more than 2 hours additional per day. And that's really saying something, because let's face it, accounts payable leaders were already working long hours before the pandemic. Next slide. It's not just how we're working that's changed in accounts payable, it's also the challenges that accounts payable departments are facing. As I said, the pandemic has completely disrupted the way it is that invoices get approved and posted and suppliers get paid. And this has introduced a lot of new challenges and new risks to an otherwise pretty staid function. 1/4 of accounts payable leaders say they're concerned about the additional risk of fraud and compliance violations as a result of the way they're doing things. This is no surprise. Many departments are relying on email to onboard suppliers to approve invoices. In some cases, we have businesses that are sending skeleton teams into the office once a week to open the mail and scan invoices into an email box, where somebody then tries to forward the emails to the appropriate purchaser or who they believe the purchaser to be. We all know that email can be risky. It's hard to control, it's hard to track, and it also disrupts our cycle times. No surprise, we've also seen a huge spike in supplier inquiries during the pandemic. Well, suppliers have cash flow issues too. And at a time when AP folks are working out of their homes and they're working longer hours, now we add into the mix more phone calls and more emails from suppliers wondering when they're going to get paid or whether we receive their invoice. And this can really add up in terms of our costs. Studies show that it costs about $3.60 to respond to just one email or phone call from a supplier. Now, $3.60 might not sound like a whole lot of money, but when you consider how many emails and phone calls your team receives in a single month from its suppliers, well, that adds up fast. Another challenge organizations are facing is an inability to pay suppliers on time because of their disrupted workflows. Let's face it, paper-based processes simply don't adapt well to work from home environments. What's more, if we're using emails to approve those invoices, well, it's hard to keep track of whether the invoice went to the right person, where it stands in the approval process. There's no way to escalate invoices to move things along. And so now at a time when the economy is already struggling, we have the possibility of supply chain disruption. And that brings us to our fourth big challenge that AP departments are facing. And that's an inadequate amount of visibility. Chances are, if you're an AP leader, CFOs are asking you for more reporting around what's going on with cash, and how the business is doing its spending. And yet, for 40% of AP departments, they rely on Excel spreadsheets. You heard me right, spreadsheets, those relics of the 1980s, to do their reporting. How the devil are we ever going to get our CFOs the information they need to navigate us through this horrendous economy if we're relying on spreadsheets? So with all of this, it's no wonder that 19% of businesses are concerned about the way that they're processing invoices today. 7% of AP leaders, they're overwhelmed. And I've got really bad news for you. Things are going to get worse because the pressure is mounting on our businesses to manage its cash. Next slide, please. Today, we're having a situation where the pandemic has completely turned the economy upside down. There's no telling when we're going to recover or how we're going to recover if we're in certain industries. 25% of businesses say that it's already hard for them to manage their spend. And this is at a time when we need to manage our spending more than ever. After all, 62% of businesses, well, they've had lower revenues as a result of COVID-19, and we're not out of this mess yet. 66% of businesses, well, they expect to reduce their costs because of the economic calamity caused by COVID-19. But how are we going to do that if we can't manage our spend, if we can't get at the data in our accounts payable department to tell us where things stand? Next slide, please. And things are really, really bad when you consider the low level of automation that most of our departments have today. In fact, 14% of businesses operate in a completely manual environment. 9% of businesses, they say their AP department has little automation. Only 6% of businesses say that they're fully automated. They operate in a fully electronic environment where invoices are received and they're posted to an ERP without an operator ever having to touch them. So what happens is that in most AP departments, most of the invoices that people receive are manually handled. And at a time when we have new ways of working, new challenges, new risks, and greater pressure than ever to manage our spend and our cash, what the devil are we handling all these invoices for manually? Next slide, please. Now, the thing is that even before the pandemic, our AP departments were already bogged down with lots and lots of manual processes. This is the history of AP. We were the quintessential back office function, the people in the basement with the hand-me-down office furniture, the off-brand coffee. People only called accounts payable when things went wrong, when they wanted to know when things were going to get paid. And the reason for that reputation is because we spend so much time on transactional processing, things that ought to have been automated a long time ago. You know the drill: opening the mail, keying invoice data, shuffling paper, figuring out who purchasers are, doing more keying when we finally get approved invoices so we can get it into the ERP. The list goes on and on. This screen has just a few of the things that AP departments are bogged down. And it's not just this, not just these tasks that are bogging us down. On top of all this, AP has to be mindful of hundreds of policies, procedures, regulations, and business rules for how it is their organization wants them to process invoices and pay their suppliers. Next slide. We need to use the lessons that we're learning during the pandemic to change accounts payable for the better. We need to use this as an opportunity to not just automate accounts payable, but to modernize it, to rethink the way it is that we process our invoices and we pay our suppliers. Today, most accounts payable departments are inflexible. Most of them don't have the visibility they need into their data. And most of them are using unsustainable processes to get them through this pandemic. And that was true even before the pandemic, because I would argue that those manual and semi-automated processes we were using before COVID-19, we shouldn't have been using them in the first place. Technologies exist today that allow us to have a touch-free invoice processing environment, an environment where our staff can stop doing the drudgery of keying and paper shuffling and more keying and more paper shuffling, and can be freed to do higher value tasks like data analysis and supplier management and cleaning up that filthy vendor master database. I'm looking at you, lady. That's right. This is possible with technology. And that's why we're here today. Next slide, please. Because the people at HighIQ realize that enough is enough. They realize that there's an opportunity to bring together emerging technologies to change the accounts payable equation, to rethink the way it is that accounts payable operates. And to tell you more about that, I'm going to hand it off to my friend Pavan. Pavan, so how does Oscar change the equation in accounts payable?
Mark, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Great topic to talk about over here, and it's my pleasure to be speaking with you. And I love the passion that you bring to this discussion. As I start talking about Oscar, I want to start with a customer promise that we gave within HighIQ to ourselves. And by the way, we started this a couple of years ago, so we were completely unaware of COVID and the impact of it. But as you said, these problems of accounts payable have existed even before. It's just been magnified by COVID. So when we began our journey, our customer promise really was that to create AI-enabled digital assistants, which can take off the drudgery, as you said, from the humans, so that they can really focus on the more important work. And that in that space, Oscar is our first offering for taking care of the accounts payable processes. And again, as you can see, what accounts payable has to offer. You've just given a very, very descriptive analysis of what accounts payable problems are. And what I'm going to talk about in the next few slides is how Oscar tries to solve some of these problems. So next slide, please. So Oscar is, as I mentioned, it's an AI-enabled digital assistant, which actually really fits into any organization very, very easily. That's the goal over here. The way we look at the problem, and as Mark just identified so many of those problems, the start from the email to entering the invoices into ERP is just one of the things that the accounts payable department does today. There are so many other things. They're managing the vendor expectations, their questions, answering the questions from the internal teams, getting the approvals of the invoices. All of these take a lot of the time of the accounts payable department, and Oscar tries to address most of these issues in a very seamless manner. Now, in order to achieve this, we have created Oscar with the best of the breed. We use AWS. We use Automation Anywhere, which is for the robotic process automation, and then combine that in the whole process end-to-end with HighIQ's own applied AI algorithms and the workflows to address the business needs. And in doing so, now you can see that as any good employee, Oscar is now able to offer a lot of assistance in terms of doing all the validations that a human would have done before entering the invoices. Currently, more than 28 validations, both for PO-based as well as non-PO-based invoices. Oscar is also able to process, of course, many invoices during the day with pretty good straight-through processing, and has inbuilt approval workflows to handle exceptions, and also to reach out to the human in the loop to solve the problems. Next slide, please. Now, Mark, I think you've really highlighted not just the invoice processing area being important for accounts payable. There's also other portions of the accounts payable area that are important to address over here. And what I want to touch upon is that Oscar, while it takes care of the invoice processing, both the PO-based as well as the non-PO-based invoices, because of the very nature of Oscar being robotic process enabler over here, is able to plug in with additional add-on bots for payments processing, for answering supplier vendor queries, statement reconciliations. It's as you said, more and more vendors are becoming concerned about their payments today, and we're seeing statement reconciliations as becoming a very important element of an accounts payable department. Oscar is able to handle those, and by the end of it, at the end of the month, Oscar can actually very quickly do your account reconciliations and period close activities, so that you can then, and your AP department can then actually focus on more of the analysis of the work and be able to actually do more productive activities during the month. So I'll at this point, if you want to go forward one more slide, please. Yeah, and so what is important is, one of the concerns that we've always heard is that, hey, how do we implement such a system? And how much time does it take to implement it? That is one of the customer promises that we had set out to ourselves, was to provide a system which doesn't require you to overhaul your infrastructure. This is a digital worker like any other employee in the organization, comes in, fits into your current environment, and is able to work with you. And for that purpose, the way Oscar has been set up is that it can actually start working with you within a very, very short period of time. In fact, you can get a Amazon account on which Oscar gets implemented within minutes, actually, and then with very few setups, initial setups, because Oscar comes pre-trained with or minimal training requirements, it's able to start work and improve its performance over a period of time, rather than waiting for it to get pre-trained and to get trained to start working. So for that purpose, we have this 30-day free trial on Amazon, very, very easy to implement, and our accounts payable customer onboarding team is actually they're experts in this area. They're here to help you to set it up very, very quickly. Open to any questions, Mark, or anybody on the call over here.
We have several of them coming in already. If you haven't asked a question, or if you have another question that you'd like to ask, use the chat tool on your screen to send them in, and we'll have Pavan answer them as time allows. So one of the questions an attendee asked is, why AWS? What benefits does the AWS platform provide for this solution?
That's a great question. I think AWS is, in addition to being best of breed, and in addition to being so pervasive in its presence in all businesses, it is secure. It is in your own private cloud or within AWS. It's very, very easy to implement. AWS has changed the way businesses are working today, and so as we see it, AWS really offers you, in addition to a secure environment, it's offering really good AI services, which we do utilize within within Oscar's capabilities as well.
And that brings us to our next question. One of our attendees writes, our AP department is completely working from home. What security protocols are in the solution to help mitigate risk?
That's a great question again. And I think you mentioned something about the fact that email is, email still remains the biggest way of receiving emails from the vendors. And they come in with their own risk. Couple of very simple workflow initiatives that have been implemented within Oscar and the offerings that we have are around what kind of email does Oscar work on. And so it's built with capabilities of looking at its own initial vendor master, which can of course be expanded over time. And it'll so sort of we provide a blinder to Oscar, so it focuses on emails that it receives from known contacts. Number one. Number two, there's a very important element of our security that Oscar does not click on any links at all. In the event that it has not found a document and it has found a link, it will reach out to a human in the loop, because Oscar is a bot, and we expect Oscar to not do what is not trained for, and that allows to provide that additional layer of protection for to avoid any kind of phishing or spamming issue that an email is generally prone to. So we are continuously looking at this as a security as a big ticket item over here, and working towards securing the email from the for Oscar.
Another one of our attendees writes in, how does this solution coexist with some automation we might have already installed? So maybe, I don't know what this person has, but maybe they have an OCR solution. How could Oscar sit alongside that solution, or would it replace it?
Oscar works alongside current automations. We've seen situations, we've had multiple installations, and we've had situations where customers are having some automation in place. Now, if you were to break the components within Oscar, you have the whole email capability. Even some of our large customers who have been using OCR in the past have had this experience that they still have to read emails and prepare the vendor invoices for OCR. I mean, there are situations where a vendor sends multiple invoices in one email, or multiple invoices in one document itself, and needs to get split. All those activities still remain manual. Oscar has tackled that problem very, very seamlessly. Oscar actually is able to split documents into multiple invoices. It is able to remove redundant pages. It is able to remove any noise in the documents even before processing it to the ERP. So that or the Oscar or the OCR. Now that itself is a big deal for many customers. So some of our customers who used or you are using OCR are able to just use the features of Oscar which they want. So because it's very customizable, it's easy to use in that way.
Another one of our attendees wants to know which ERPs Oscar can integrate with. The way we look at it is like a human being in your AP department. Today he works in an organization which uses Oracle ERP. Tomorrow he goes and uses a different organization which might be using SAP. And
later on maybe joins another organization which uses NetSuite. Therefore, this digital assistant that we have is also should be capable of connecting with various ERPs. And in order to do this, the core of the application has to be looked at. The core of the work that Oscar does is agnostic of the ERP system. The email pretty much remains in either Outlook or on a webmail, and Oscar manages both of them. Oscar has its own inbuilt OCR if required, and is able to work with that. Has its own hub where it manages and reports its invoices processed during the day, during the month, and all the activities that it does. It's all within Oscar. Now, from there on, Oscar actually is able to connect with pretty much any ERP right now. We not just ERP, we have connectors built in for Oracle EBS. We have for NetSuite, for Oracle Fusion, SAP, even for QuickBooks. So very easy to integrate with any downstream application based on either flat files or on other mechanisms, whichever the API of that application allows for.
Another attendee wants to know what level of involvement from their IT department would be involved in the deployment of Oscar.
That is a very good question. Again, I would say the simplification customer promise that we have has been greatly assisted by AWS, and as I said, it's the whole objective over here is to enable very fast deployment with very minimal IT involvement as such. And I'm happy to say that with AWS in place, the deployment can happen very fast, even in a matter of minutes. Actually, that you can actually download or through the AWS environment. It spawns an environment for you to start working on almost instantaneously. So AWS does solve that big problem. And to allude to your first question also, why AWS? I think that's one of the reasons that AWS allows you to solve that problem very easily.
Another attendee wants to, I'm sorry. Another attendee wants to know what invoice formats does Oscar support? You mentioned email. What other formats can Oscar process?
Oscar is able to handle multiple invoice types. Right now, invoices can flow in the form of PDF documents, which is the most common way. We also have invoices we are able to handle images, PNG, JPEG images, as well as Word and Excel documents are also a part of our different types of formats, which Oscar is able to handle presently.
A follow-up question here from one of our attendees. They want to know whether your workflows are configurable.
Oscar overall is a very easy to customize application. As far as workflows are concerned, we have a workflow for the non-PO based invoices, and it's easy to customize. It has the approval workflow is already seated approval workflow is built in, but very easy to customize to suit your requirements. Again, key over here is for us to for Oscar to be able to to be used quickly, and so that the ROI starts coming in. And we've kept it in such a way that the offering is easy to start working with.
Yeah. Another attendee wants to know, can Oscar match invoices against POs?
Oscar definitely can match invoices against POs. There is a connector which actually uploads the PO invoices from the ERP. And so that's one of the connections that Oscar has built in, wherein once Oscar reads an invoice with a PO number, it actually parses that information out to the ERP system, gets all the information from there about the PO, matches it, whether the PO is existing, whether the PO is for the same vendor, it's still active. It also does line pairing, which means if the lines are really the lines on the PO, it does the matching for that. And we do have the capability of doing further matching, but it's restricted to the matching which the ERP does not do. All the ERP related matching we expect the ERP to handle, but in case of a customer who's not having a PO backed invoice and wants to maintain proof of purchase, that is also a feature available within Oscar. Oscar can actually record the proof of purchase within Oscar for every invoice. So it's very comprehensive.
Another attendee wants to know what's involved in turning on additional capabilities. If I only want to start with invoice processing, how hard is it to turn on statement matching, for example, later? Statement matching
is an add-on as add-on bot which gets added on to Oscar very easily. These are bots which are available off the shelf from our HighIQ bot store, and you're able to use them in a matter of a few weeks. Because there is some amount of connectivity to your application, to your scenario, to your ERP, etc., which might be required. But other than that, it's very, very easy to use. There are at least 5 such add-on bots covering areas such as statement reconciliation, period end close, and I want to talk about the within the period end close, there are multiple activities such as AP to GL reconciliation. All these are add-on bots which are very easy to implement within Oscar.
So why Oscar? Let's face it, there's lots of AP solutions out there. What makes Oscar best, better, or different than the others?
In a true sense, Oscar is easy to use. You don't require a massive implementation or overhaul of your existing system. It uses best of breed, as I mentioned, applied AI to start working with you in matter of weeks rather than months, or in most cases, any implementation of such AP systems takes 6 to 8 months, 9 months sometimes to just get started. With Oscar, you start with it literally within a few weeks, if not days. It understands your applications and your environment and is able to start working even with very minimal or little training in specific areas. That I feel is the biggest offering of Oscar, which allows you to start working quickly and to achieve your ROI very, very quickly. Again, it's offered through AWS. It is easy to install, easy to maintain. We are working in a driverless environment today, Mark. And if in today's time we take 6 to 8 months to deploy a software, that's hard to sell. So that's the key. The key over here is to instant gratification, if you may call, and so that's what we're working towards.
Thank you so much, Pavan, for an excellent presentation and for answering all of our questions. Thank you all for joining us today and for asking your questions. We invite you to visit the HighIQ website to learn more about Oscar and to start your free trial. And with that, this is Mark Brousseau on behalf of Pavan and the entire team at HighIQ, wishing you a good afternoon.